It was funny because I went to like the primary stakeholder and I was like, "Hey, I have like a draft. I just kind of want to run it by you, you know." And I showed him, and he was like, "Dude, I can't. You've done it. This is incredible."
Welcome back to Build It Faster. You thought we were gone because we waited a couple weeks because I didn't publish a couple of backlog episodes. This is your hosts Mike and Joe. We're here to build it faster. And today, Mike, I hear that you're building it faster.
Yeah, man. I'm like addicted to Claude now. I was joking with some friends last night, which, by the way, I was up way too late playing Raft last night, and I couldn't walk away because we got Kyle playing. He hasn't even started his gaming PC in like I don't know. He's like pushing a year. It's been like forever, but he actually fired it up last night at risk of it spewing liquid cooling liquid just to play, and it worked out. It was fine. I don't know, maybe the liquid dried out or something. I don't know what the problem was, but it was fine. But yeah, we stayed up late, and now I'm hitting that midday like I'm crashing pretty hard right now, but it was really fun. While we were hanging out, I was at the same time playing Raft. I was fucking asking Claude to just keep like, dude, it's crazy. I was joking with them, right? Like it's like these tools are supposed to make us, air quotes, work less or something. It's like, fuck no, dude. It tricked me. Like now I'm addicted to working. It's like firing the same neurons in my brain that are triggered by like doom scrolling. It's like I have to see the neck, like what's around the riverbed here. And I can't just ask a question and go to bed. I can't go to bed without like I'm like this is going to be wasted cycles. If I don't ask it to like do something when I go to bed, that's like wasted time. And so I'm like, okay, and I'll even tell Claude, I'm like, I'm going to bed, okay? So don't do anything that you need me for, because I'm not going to be here to tell you it's okay. So get as far as you can without me, and don't forget to do this, don't forget to do this, and then do this, and I'll see you in the morning. And like it's funny to come back and it to be like okay like it said shit to me like have a great night and like here for the morning when you come back. It's such a obedient assistant. But it's been wild, man. Yeah, I'm like addicted to working now, which is kind of fucked up. Like I think it's a weird change. And it's I don't know, maybe even not healthy. Like I gotta like refigure out work life balance now because it's hard to stop working. It's like anytime I have a thought, I'm just going and talking to Claude and I'm exploring it. I think I'm because of my time spent with you in Mabry, I think I'm a lot further ahead than I would have been had I been trying to figure this stuff out on my own. And there are just so many little kind of strategies and techniques to working with Claude or any LLM, but for me it's Claude right now. That I think I don't even know how you teach this stuff. I'm about to have to figure out how to teach this stuff. I think I'm gonna start training people at work, like the specifically the non-engineering folks, how to use these tools because I think more people are going to get access to these tools soon. And every time I show them the stuff that I'm working on, they're like, "This is incredible that you can do this. Like, how do I do this?" I'm like, I mean, I could teach you. Do you have access yet?" And they're like, "No, how do I get access?" I'm like, "Okay, hold on a sec." I think we're working on that. But I wanted to use our time today to talk about kind of like what I've been doing recently. I have to be careful because it's work stuff, so I can't share everything and all the details about what I'm doing, but I'll share the most I can and some lessons that I learned along the way, which I think is the real value to the conversation. I think this will largely be a discussion episode. I don't know that I'm going to show too much that's exciting, but I am curious along the way as things kind of come to mind for you as exciting points of interest or areas to, double click and go a little deeper. I'd love to do that. I say let's take every detour that sounds exciting along the way through the conversation. It's been a few weeks since we've talked. And one of the only things I told you, aside from kind of like sending you I think I sent you some of the feedback I was getting from people along the way, because I'm excited by it and I don't really have a ton of people that I can share that with. So I appreciate you being there. I'd like to share with you some more detail about it. And like I said to you in text messages, I was like, bro, I feel like I'm a different person. Like, I know we took a few weeks off, kind of like a unintended hiatus, just circumstances came up, then I was on vacation, yada yada. And so it's been a few weeks, and I am not the guy that you saw last. Like, I'm a totally different person. I approach work differently, and it's like I'm busier than I've ever been, and I'm also getting more done than I've ever gotten done. But in the same vein, I don't know like who I am or what my role is now. It's like so wild. So this is like fun. This is crazy. This is exactly where I hoped to be. I think years ago, when like the first time we sat down, we talked to Mabry about like LLMs, and we were just kind of talking through a lot of what was like, oh, one day it might be like a lot of that is happening now. Also, that video by I forget the dude's name. He's like Czechian or something. What is it?
Say the content rather than his nationality, and I might be able to help.
It's the sort of like overview of AI basics, like LLM basics for people video.
Carpathy. You watched a 3 hour
Yep.
Carpathy
There it
video
is.
on here's literally precisely how they work, and I'm telling you that is surely already, but going to continue serving you.
Yeah,
Having suffered through watching that, I'm sure it helped a lot.
it should be required viewing. I was talking to a colleague who is, we've talked about them before, like a little, I would say maybe even a lot more on the like skeptical side of LLMs and LLM use. And I think a lot of the arguments, well, first of all, they're aware of this individual. They're like, oh yeah, that's the guy who coined the term vibe coding, and basically like classifies him as like, oh, he thinks these things are like alive, and like he's a fool. And I'm like, dude, honestly, if you can just spare 3 hours, if you can just spare a quick 3 hours, I watched the video over many sessions over a couple weeks, but if you can spare the 3 hours, he acknowledges head on, the shortcomings of LLMs. And not only that, but like this same person that I'll have these conversations with will say things like, oh, well, like LLMs are dumb, they hallucinate all the time and all stuff. And it's like, yes, they do. And especially in their raw form, like a raw LLM is really dumb at a lot of things. And to have, what you say, Carpathy is his name?
Carpathy.
Carpathy. To have him
I think it's Andre Carpathy. I didn't want to guess
yeah,
the name. I should have looked it up. It's Carpathy. Carpathy. He is a machine learning icon. He knows
yeah.
anyone that has a comment about what he knows doesn't know who they're referring to.
Yeah.
Like this is
And
like
like I
the
said,
guy.
even the people that don't like AI know who this guy is. I was like apparently the only person who doesn't know who this guy is. I think he worked for OpenAI early on or something like that. And so
I'm pretty sure he
like
was
a
a
co-founder,
I think he's a self-driving car pioneer.
That's funny.
That's the joke. His last name is Carpathy.
Carpathy, because he understands.
That's the joke. Carpathy.
Really good joke. That is a really good joke. Okay, kind of like how the Bordetella vaccine is. Anyway, so this guy faces the shortcomings head on, and then in a layered approach, over the course of 3 hours, talks about like, okay, this is like a raw, dumb LLM, and let's look at kind of how it behaves. Okay, and now here are some problems that you're going to run into if you try to use this as a kind of utility. And here are the things it can do. Here are the things that it does poorly. What do we do to address the things that it does poorly? And then he goes through the next layer, and then the next layer, and it's at the point by the end of the video, which is now I think like 2 years old, 3 years old almost, maybe more even. He starts talking about like what will come, what is to come. And a majority of that is already here, that he's talking about in the video, which is also exciting to listen to him talk about. But to have a better foundational understanding of like how these things operate and what their weaknesses are, and then how we address their weaknesses, and then how we bring in a bunch of extra tooling, really, I think has built my confidence in them a lot better. So I'm excited about that, or I was excited about that. And on top of that, I started an AI guild at work.
Nice.
And we started, I think our first session was just engineers, and then our second session, like it became clear in the first session, like we should invite people that aren't engineers to this. And so now it's more open. And the first presentation, because we did lean coffee at the first one with just engineers, and then at the second session, we had presentation lined up. And so what I'm doing is presentation first, and then if there's more than a half hour left over, we can play lean coffee. If there's less than a half hour left over, we can do Q&A and dip out early, because there's an hour-long session. And I don't know if we'll ever play lean coffee again. A lot of people are really excited to share the things that they've been doing. So we'll see.
Maybe you can play thick chai,
Thick chai, baby.
right? Where you have 15-minute slots.
Yeah,
Thick chai.
True. Thick
Just
chai.
made that up. Stole that from HK, of course.
You use that a bit, yeah.
But I also just started an AI guild right after
Nice.
you. You're like, I'm doing this. And I'm like, that is what I should call it. And then I did. And then it got called out in the all hands and a bunch of people joined. And so we're having another call on Friday. And I'm probably going to use leancoffee.black because I don't know how to stop the video from being available until I
Isn't
put it
that
behind Stripe
Levi's tool?
on. That's Levi's tool. Well, it's
Nice.
just so easy and it's already ephemeral. And I haven't taken the time to sneak that feature into my thing yet. And so I'm probably going to use his.
That's funny.
Um,
Good for him.
until I go, hi, please take that and put it into mine. But just so I also did one and called it that because you called it that, and it's going to be very popular. I'm in charge of it's called AI Playbook initiative here, and what I've been doing is I take just transcripts of me explaining stuff, and I'm like, hey, agent, update the guide, paste. And then it's like, oh, good grief, that was a big prompt. Let me hash this out for you. And then it does.
Oh my God. So you're already bringing up some things that I learned along the way too. Or it's funny because you brought up some stuff that I wasn't ready for, and then I was able to recall it as I encountered
Nice.
the situation. I was like, oh shit.
Well, like
You know,
what? Like what?
well, one is transcripts to changes. I think, so I've been working on this thing. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll go back and I'll describe a bit more of what I'm working on.
You
But
take your pace. I'm just excited. Good, good.
yeah, yeah,
Take your
yeah, yeah.
pace.
No, me too. You can. I would have like a demo call and show somebody what I was working on, and they would say like, "Oh, that's cool. Can you do this? Can it do that? What if we could change this?" And then I can just take the transcript, and that is a new input to go to Claude and talk about what I want to do next.
Yes.
And I'm trying to write down here all of these little lessons that I've learned along the way because I really I want to kind of
And I
hit
will,
on a lot of them.
as long as you say them, they'll show up in the pod transcript, and you can feed that into Claude for what it's worth. It is a public document.
That is great. That is great. And we're living the meta life now, man. So let me tell you. I guess let me tell you a story, and we'll see where it goes. So I was tapped to solve a problem at work, and the problem was really kind of a communication problem. And we have this issue where we're trying to, onboard partners, and there is a document that really is kind of like a requirements doc, I would say, for onboarding a partner. And we would run into issues, call them like integration issues, in the 11th hour because certain things maybe weren't covered in the document. And so, and not only not covered in the document, but we didn't always call in the right people until it became clear that like there was going to be an integration issue right here before we launched this thing. So just wasn't ideal. And then also if you're if you want to push back on something like, oh, well, I know that the partner wants this, but I don't know that we should do that. It's like, well, we're already signed, launches tomorrow. Let's just, let's just do it. And that was really difficult, So the idea was to sort of to solve that, but how do we solve that? And I'm working with internal folks to figure out kind of like what does communication look like here? What does process look like? And what we landed on was, okay, so if we fill out this onboarding doc, can we really standardize that document by using a form to fill it out? So you fill out a form, and the output of the form is a mutable document. You can still make changes to the document, but the document captures kind of like that initial state. Filling out the form instantiates a document, which then can be used both to negotiate scope and make changes, but also serve as a checklist, to go through before integrating and onboarding a partner to say like, okay, have we covered everything that we want to cover here? And so I went to Claude, right? And I was like, yo, we want to use a Google form. Can you build me a Google form? And it was like, no, I can't build you a Google form. I don't have like the right connectors to do that. What I could do is I could use like the Chrome browser functionality, and I can go and I can click around and build the form for you. But that's kind of like I forget what metaphor it used, but it was like a broad shotgun kind of approach where it was like, it's probably going to be sloppy, probably going to use a lot of tokens, and like, you probably don't want to go that route. Another thing I can do is write you a Google app, and that Google app can build your form for you. And I was like, what's a Google app? And of course it had to explain to me something that I didn't even know existed in Google, which was kind of fun. And in the Google,
Didn't you have to like coax it into doing that in the first place, though? You used one of the techniques we discussed to get past the hurdle of it. I
thank you
think
for
refusing initially, no?
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I think it was somewhere in that conversation where it was like, well, this is what I can do, and I was like, are you like you? And I will write this one down because this is a tip that came directly from you, which was, are you sure? That's something that is like lesson one, was like, you get an answer and you're like, ew. Ask if it's sure. Ask it to say like, what's crazy is like, this is a problem that I will have with stakeholders is if I'm not careful, they'll ask me to do something, and if I just do it, I might do something that is like kind of silly and doesn't exactly meet their needs. It's a lot better for me to ask like, what outcome are you looking for, and think about maybe some other ways of getting that outcome that aren't the same as what they're asking me for. And so I basically asked the LLM to do me like that. Like, hey man, here's what I'm trying to get to. All right, let's take a step back. You're talking about going into my browser, clicking around to make a Google form. I don't really know like if that's the right thing to do. Here's what I want to do. I want to have a Google form. I want that Google form, after it's submitted, to spit out a Google Doc that is mutable that we can change and work on. And it's like, geez, yeah, you want that too? Google Forms can't even spit out a doc. They can only spit out to a spreadsheet. But like, let me think about it, And it thought for 10 minutes maybe, And then it was like, all right, I can make you a Google app. The Google app will build the form. And then when a form is submitted, the Google app has a trigger, so it'll be listening. And it'll take that submission, it'll think about the submission, and then it'll spit out the doc that you need. And on top of that, what I had done before this, I skipped over this step. It's so hard to tell a story when there's so many things that happen in it. But this is like, if this is V1, there was a V0, where instead of having some automatic process, all I wanted to do was, you remember how I said we have these like, this sort of onboarding doc, this sort of integration doc? Well, we had this problem of like, well, some are real low level of complexity and we don't need a lot of people to get involved. Some are a little bit higher level of complexity, we need more people to get involved. And there's sort of degrees of that. And you could color them. You could say it's green, yellow, red, green, yellow, orange, red. And I had it make me a skill. I had Claude make me a skill. All it did was it took in, I said, here's the rubric. So it had like all of these factors make it a second degree complexity. All of these factors make it a third degree complexity. And for a second degree complexity, these are the people that should be involved. For a third degree complexity, these are the people that should be involved. I also gave it some examples of onboarding docs that had been written in the past. And I also gave it the full documentation write-up that was the result of like this is a problematic process, we need to make it better, here's how we think we can make it better. It was kind of a cross-functional document that was like, here's what we should do with this process. So I gave it all that context, and I was like, make me a scoring skill. So I can give you a brief, and you give me an analysis, a score of that brief. and it nailed it, honestly. I was giving it briefs that we already like knew the level of complexity because these were completed things. It's like triangulation. It's like looking at finished work to figure out the size of current work, and it worked very well. And so then when I got to the step that I was describing previously, where you submit a form and then it builds a doc, I had to integrate that skill into the doc building, right? Because it's like, you're building the doc. I'm going to ask you to score the doc anyway. Fucking build the score into the doc. So now, not only does the top of the doc contain the complexity analysis, it also identifies every specific area that makes it that complex based on the answers that came out of the form. And in the doc itself, it gives you little icons that let you know, like, this makes it a yellow, this is an orange indicator, this is a red indicator. And that's really fantastic, because if you're somebody who's working with a partner trying to onboard them, if there's one answer in there that makes it like a 3rd degree complexity onboarding, if you can negotiate that down, you can make the complexity lower, which speeds things up for you and makes your job easier, makes everybody else's job easier, and maybe you get paid sooner or something like that. If there's commission-based element to it. So really cool what it spits out. And then I hooked it. I was like, well, so you're going to make the doc. How do we get people to know, right? Because that's another side of the problem. It's like not everyone that needs to know knows early enough that we now have a new partner onboarding brewing, and we need to get people thinking about it. So I had it send an email, and so it would send the email with a link to the doc. You can immediately open the doc, and that was kind of cool. But then I ran into this problem where like Google app ownership is kind of weird, and like the emails had to come like from me, and then I can't help but be conscious of like bus factor and what happens if I'm not here or something, and I don't want this whole thing to just shut down. It's basically as if I'm the guy doing all this. Like, it's like you're submitting a Google form to me. I'm taking the Google form, building you a doc, and sending you an email, and I didn't want it to continue to operate like that. So I thought about it, and there were some hurdles I could get past to make the email thing work out. But when I was talking to stakeholders, they all seem to really prefer Slack anyway. And I prefer Slack. And I'm like, dude, why start spamming people's email inbox when we could just do this in Slack? Instead of solving the email problem, I shift gears entirely, eliminated the email, and now we use Slack. So it sends these notifications to Slack. It has the link to the doc, and it, based on the level of complexity, pings the right people early on. So if it's like a 1st degree simple complexity thing, it just pings the submitter and says like, congrats, you made a doc, here you go, now go get her done. If it's a higher level complexity, it starts tacking on more folks who need to be involved earlier, which is really cool. So I did all this, I presented it to a few people, and it was funny because I went to like the primary stakeholder and I was like, hey, I have like a draft, I just kind of want to run it by you, And I showed him, and he was like, dude, I can't, you've done it. This is incredible. I can't believe you finished. And I was like, finished? Like, bro, I have like 10 things that I need to fix and that I want to get done. Like, this is just like a prototype. And he's like, I don't even know how you can make this better. This is incredible. And so really, really cool. And now I'm putting like finishing touches on it and making some tweaks and stuff. That's like what channel it goes to. And I say finishing touches, but what I also love about this is like it's still very adaptable. I mean, what changes look like in this project specifically is like Claude updates the Google app, and then if no changes happen to the form building section of the code, I can continue using the same form that I have forever, and the form's in a pretty good state. If I want to change the form, I can either go into the Google form and manually change it, or I can ask Claude to change it for me, and it'll change the app, and then I'll have to rebuild the form using the app. The app also at one point, so I built this form, right? The form is like 14 sections. It's a big form. Fortunately, you don't have to fill in all of it to submit it, because I want you to be able to submit something when you don't have all the information, because that is a problem that I noticed in the process. Was the folks who were supposed to write the form would say like, well, I don't have all the answers yet, so I'm not ready to write the form, and I'm not ready to write the onboarding doc. And I'm like, yeah, but the answers you do have are really the information that we need to know the level of complexity and know that we should get people involved early. The other little details that you don't have yet, like, fucking aren't going to make a difference, So submit the thing with what you've got, and really it should be based on like timing. Like, are we getting close to signing something with this partner? If so, you should submit the form, ideally just before signing. That way, if we want to negotiate any last minute stuff, we can do that. And so, anyway, we talked about that, and something that came up along the way was like, oh man, how do I? Well, first of all, like I'm starting a new session every day when I talk to it, and it was like the first time you run into this 51st dates problem where it's just like
51st dates problem. You got to explain your terms. This is a good one.
yeah, it's like every day you talk to the LLM and it's a new person and it forgot everything you talked about yesterday. And so you have to, if you've ever seen 51st Dates, spoiler alert, the main character can't remember anything because of a car accident or whatever. And then by the end of the movie, the guy who falls in love with her basically makes her like a "This Is Your Life" VHS tape that says "Play Me" on it. And so when she wakes up in the morning, she plays the VHS tape, and it grounds her in like who she is and what she cares about. And then she, goes about her day with at least that to start from. And you kind of have to do that with the LLM, and you need it to do that for you. So I spent a lot of time not even working directly on the project, but sort of like working on Claude itself. And I'm like, okay, Claude makes a Claude.md file in every project, which is kind of like that is the VHS tape, but it can also refer out to, so it's like read this before you do anything whenever I start a session. But it can also refer out to other resources. So I had it make all these extra resources. I was like, make this, it made a Word doc, like a whole design doc that fully explains how the app works. That is both human readable, but also useful for Claude to get context on how the project works. Every time I would have it make a change, you also had me set up Git. So it's every time I make a change, it would commit to Git, it would go update the MD file, and it would update the design doc. And those things together made it pretty firmly know where we were at and where we were going every time I would start a new session. Something else I learned was like editing a Google form, right? You don't want to be like, hey, let's make this change. And then it goes and it updates the code. And then you go and you build a new form, and you do that for every little change. So what I did is I had it make a HTML representation of the form that it built, of the Google form that it built. And if I open that up and showed you, you would look at it and it would look like a Google form that you could click and use, but nothing is clickable, nothing works. It's just a visual representation of it. And when I would ask it to make changes to the form early on while I was working, I was like, this question's kind of off. Let's fix this question. Let's do that. It would just change the HTML file. And once we got to where I was like, I'm scrolling down and I'm liking the form. I'm liking the questions. I like how it looks. Like, okay, now go update the doc in the form builder area, and then I'll build a new form from this. So that was another big lesson for me too, is like planning before executing. And it's funny because like we do that in real life, right? And everybody, I think, that gets their hands on an LLM just wants to one-shot everything. And that's like exciting. And you can one-shot some stuff, and it's super thrilling when you tell it to do something and does something that's like 95% of the way there. And I think that it's like a cliche thing now to hear people say like, yeah, dude, it was so awesome, and it works so great except for like these couple things, I just can't quite. And I'm like, well, what did you do to plan? And they're like, I just like one shot it. And I'm like, well, I bet that you could have maybe gotten all the way if you planned first. And so the planning, I'm often now telling Claude like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Make a plan and let's run it by me first, and then we'll decide what to do next. You look like something came to mind.
Do you know about plan mode?
No. This is great. This is the first.
This will be fun.
Me triggering something. We're like, oh my god, you're literally doing shit the hard way.
So I'll link you a video offline of Matt Pocock, I think, explaining the loop. This is going to be your life for the next week. The next time you have an existing session, okay, and then you kind of you got to open a fresh one, right?
Yeah.
When you get to the end of having done a thing, run /plan and then just hit enter or /plan and then the initial thing you want it to do. It will already have the context. It'll enter read-only plan mode and it will hash out with you the plan. And then you hit clear context and execute plan, and you can do that over and over and over again.
Okay, we're gonna have to maybe slow down, take it back.
Oh yeah,
So,
I know.
what
Now,
I'm not, so
I
like,
just
I'm
wanted to
at
give you
the
the top
end.
to the
What you're
bottom.
saying, I'm at the end of a session, and I tell it to plan. Why am I planning at the end of the session? I'm
Because
confused.
it's already got the context.
Okay, but then do I
And what
take
it's
that
doing
plan
is,
to a new session
so
effectively?
you've got your work, you've got your context, and then you run /plan. Here's this new thing I want to do, and it goes, okay, let me spin up an agent to think through what you're asking for. Does this plan look good to you? And you go, no, do this. And then it goes, does this plan look good to you? And then you can select one of the options is accept plan and clear context. It will open a fresh thread with the full plan and just run the plan.
Wow. Okay. So
And
okay.
so that's a
So
viable
that
loop, though
sounds
you
like
do
you're
have to
daisy chaining almost, like
a little bit.
one
You do,
session to
I
the
think,
next.
still want to attend to being capable of hydrating from fresh, but with what you're doing, you might enjoy one using plan mode anyway. Like you could use /plan anyway to spit out a plan. And when you do so, you should as well uh, ask it to sacrifice grammar for concision, make it concise, so that it just, caveman you know, tells you the plan rather than being like, here is a very elaborated, verbose plan. It'll be like, okay, well, here's what I'm doing. And you go, yeah. So try /plan, I guess is my point.
Okay. And you say that as a Claude code utility, right? Okay.
All of them have it, but yes,
Even Cowork has it? Because I've been using Cowork pretty heavily.
probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I'd be confused if it didn't have /plan. You could probably get away with it. I've never used Cowork. It's the same thing though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I even asked Claude, I was like, when should I use Claude Code versus Claude Cowork? Because I have both of them. I'm not sure exactly what all of the differences are. I mean, Cowork to me has maybe a little bit more of a user-friendly kind of interface and experience. So I've been using it more for that. But when I want to get real heavy into like inquiring about the code and about maybe some kind of like feature that we could work on and what the complexity of that might be, I switch over to Claude Code and I start talking like that because I have pulled the code bases down on my machine. But then I started like this new project, right? I'm trying to pick up on a large project that has been picked up and put down a few times over the last couple of years. And we're trying to kind of get after it again this year. And I wanted to make like a roadmap and explain to the key stakeholders all the way up the chain exactly what the project is, where we're at, where we're going, what we think the timeline will be. And I was like, man, like what's the right artifact to do this in? And ultimately I came up with 3 artifacts, and I'll kind of start with the end. The end result was like I have a spreadsheet that is essentially like a true status tracker for all pieces. And then there is a slideshow presentation that's only 7 slides, and it just is like the first couple slides are like, what is this project? Why does it matter? And then it gets into like, why is this project complex? Then it talks about how the overall system is supposed to work when it's done. And then a timeline, like where we're at and what we have ahead of us and what our kind of target is. And then risks. And to accompany that short, concise, pretty presentation, I created a companion document that basically has roughly half a page of context to go along with each slide. That's also very well organized and kind of addresses bullet by bullet with a little more detail. And the doc it pairs well with the presentation if you're sitting through the presentation, but it also works well as just a reference document, to give you an overview of the project. So I built all these things with Claude. And the way that I built it with Claude is the interesting part, because there was so much to go into it. There was this, we worked with a third-party vendor to come up with, I guess, what I'll describe as a complex design doc for this project. And so I provided that design doc. I also, and we're talking like this design doc is a spreadsheet. It's like templates. These are like data tables, and so it's like pretty technical is the point. So I gave it that. And then I gave it the two previous roadmaps that were kind of defunct at this point, the status trackers of the past that were defunct at this point. And I was like, this is like how we were tracking things. This is kind of how to think about the elements of the project, because there's sort of several phases for each piece. There's like a coding phase and a data phase and a validation phase, and there's different engineers who take care of different things at different phases. So I was like, this is kind of how we're tracking it. And then I was like, where are we, right? Like, how do I even know where we are? I was like, I need you to go look at the code and tell me what we've done already, And so I gave it, this is where it got complicated and why I came here from the co-work versus code question, which was like, I needed to analyze the code base, but I wasn't using code, I was using co-work. And so I was like, hey, I'm working with code here next door. It's a tab over in this app, in this Claude app. Can you access the same code base that it accesses? And it was basically like, no. And frankly, I probably should have said, are you sure? But it was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, just copy the folder, kind of copy the code base into this project folder so that I can access it there. And I was like, whatever, fine, no problem. So I did that.
I should offer that Claude code, when you spin it up, operates in a folder. And so if you spin it up in a folder, by default, it cannot access outside the folder. And so you might, if you know where the folder is, go to the folder, open Claude code in that folder, and then it can access what's ever in there, by the way.
I think they're literally like the same tool with different interfaces that are just better for depending on who's using it. Yeah. So, and that's fine. But I was kind of having to figure that out. I'm like, I'm not working with Claude Code, but I'm getting to a sort of code heavy element in this piece here. So anyway, I figured it out. I got access to the code base. And I also wanted to give it access to GitHub so that it could read PRs and stuff, but I ran into a bit of a problem doing that. And at the time I was flying so fast, and Claude was like, don't sweat it, dude. I've got the code base. I'm looking at that, and it's honestly got the answers that like we're looking for here based on kind of like what exists in the code. So it was fine at the time, but I'm still probably going to go back and have it look at related PRs as well.
I gotta say, you're going to want to generate a read-only GitHub access token, because then you can give that read-only GitHub access token to Claude Code and tell it to go to absolute town looking up what it needs. That's a primary accelerator for me. I'll be like, hey, go find it, Like, just go tear through, clone down, do whatever you need. No writes. Okay? And it can read issues and PRs and all the history.
Yeah. So that's definitely a step that I'm going to get to. Another step ahead of me is like hooking it up to Snowflake so that I can answer like real world questions. Like, I get hit up by stakeholders who ask me questions. They're like, whoa, what happened with this order? Why are we seeing this weird financial data? And I just want to fucking have Claude look into that for me. But I need it. Yeah.
It can, and you totally must. Can. Read only.
Right. Well, read. Exactly.
And read only.
Yeah.
And then you can let it go nuts. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure even my access to Snowflake is probably read-only. So
that would probably be good, but don't accidentally let it write to things you shouldn't write to, is all I'm saying. Read only.
Yeah, I'm being extra careful. I already ran into something where Claude was like, don't
tokens are
give
loaded.
Me that, because I'm trying to set up access to a couple things, like when I was working with Slack and, God, what was it? I can't remember. It was when I was trying to submit a PR for a problem. And I only wanted to submit a PR because I wanted to know I could in the future. And I submitted a PR for something that was definitely meatier than you would ever want a PM to pretend they know what they're doing on. And so I closed the PR. Like, I had no intention of it going anywhere. But it is a real problem, and I do hope someone solves it. And if my PR happens to be in any way a cool jumping off point or a reference, that would be fun. But anyway, along the way, there were times where I had to like set up GitHub keys and stuff like that so that it could publish to GitHub. And I'd be like, okay, I have the key. You want it? And it's like, no, don't give it to me. It'll be in the chat log. You have to go into your own terminal and put the keys here. That's what you do. And I'm like, okay, thanks, dog. I appreciate that. So that's another small tip I would say is like before you paste anything, well, first of all, don't paste keys, don't paste passwords into your Claude chat. Ask it where you should put those things, and it'll tell you where you should put those things. But you can't just, even if you trust Claude, you're like, well, it knows everything else. It has the code base. Like, it's like, yeah, but don't give it the fucking passwords because then they exist in the chat history, and that's insecure and not a great thing. So I learned that. That was funny. And okay, so where are we in the story? So this is a
You were
new
having
thing.
it look through the code base to see
Right,
where we
right,
actually
right,
were.
right. I was having to look through the code base to see where we actually were and compare against our, defunct roadmap, our defunct tracker. And I was like, is it up to date where we left off? Or was there anything that was done that just wasn't updated in the tracker? I think it did a really good job of explaining where we were on everything. And it also added a notes column on the tracker that was basically kind of like explain why this is the current status. So it would be like, oh, well, I see that, this is in the code. It's right here. This was like stalled out according to this ticket. Oh, because I also had it looking at Notion. It was looking at the Notion epic.
Nice.
And so that brings me to my next lesson that I learned, which is as a noob, it's easy to think that Claude has access to or that Claude is omniscient. Like it knows everything and it can just read everything. But there's sort of like a limit, at least in the session context, to like how much Claude can read at a given time. So what that means is like it's not reasonable to say, hey Claude, go read the entirety of Notion, of our Notion like database. Just go read all of it and then come back and tell me the things that I want to hear based on everything that you read. That's not really the right way to go about it. I mean, it's not at all the right way to go about it. But it's not really the right way to think about it either. The right way to think about it is like, go read the relevant stuff and come back to me. And so I'm learning this kind of like what you want is for Claude to have access to as much as you can possibly safely, securely give it access to. But you still need to channel its focus based on whatever it is you're talking about. For example, it has access to Slack. And so for this project, one of the inputs that I gave it, I said, go to Slack, search for this term, the project name, and read the 5 biggest threads you can find. The 5 longest threads.
Nice.
And, some of them were like 100 plus replies. But I felt like that would be a good, meaty kind of place to dig into, if not the primary context. Really, what I wanted it to read in Slack for were like, where are the concerning problem areas with this project? And that was how I thought that was a good way to maybe get some exposure to that.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you see that it uses sub-agents?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you ever see it say,
no.
because sometimes it'll do it, sometimes you got to tell it to do it, and sometimes it'll be like, let me use an explore agent for this. And then it'll have a little subtask and it'll like grind over here and then come back with a summary.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean,
and so you can in fact ask it to read, and you could in fact have asked it to go read literally every thread, ideally to the end of indexing them so that you don't need to read them the next time, some kind of intermediate artifact. But you can literally be like, hey, go spin up a shit ton of subagents and go get literally all of the information and put it in literally this document, and then go read the consolidated summary of your findings.
Okay, so that's another good thing I can try. Because another way that I got through was like I gave it the epic in Notion, right? And I was like, here's like the project basically as the engineers are tracking it, and it has like 24 child tasks, and I don't even think we haven't even made child tasks for everything that needs to be done. So it went and it looked, it's like, yeah, I see it has like 24 child tasks, but rather than me like reading every single one of those child tasks, we're just looking into status here. just screenshot the list of child tasks and send me that. It'll be a lot faster. And so I just did that. I gave a screenshot. And I was like, ah, cool. Okay, cool. I see what's assigned to who and what status it is. And that was just the input that I was looking for there. The lesson here, like I was kind of saying, was point it at the relevant things. Similar, I think, a problem that I ran into with GitHub. So I wasn't able to get it to like go read the GitHub PRs. I could have spent more time on it, but like I said, I was going a different route anyway. I was too excited to move forward with building documents. So I'll go back and do that. It was also suggesting I kind of like pull a CSV of everything in GitHub. I wasn't really sure what I was doing with that. So these are all things that's kind of something I want to learn more about. And
kind of export rather than manually digging through. That's a smart idea. If you can get an export of everything, then you're done.
right.
You just have to go to town on the export.
Yeah. So there's some things that I'm kind of like right on the cusp of digging into next and learning more about. I think getting more access to GitHub, getting access to GitHub and Snowflake, I think are the two things that I want to get a better handle on. I know that I have gotten Claude access to GitHub in that it literally opened a PR for me. Like it did everything, and it opened the PR and it gave me the link and said, "Here, go look at your PR." And so I know it can do that, and like Circle CI ran, like it ran all the tests, like 3 tests failed on my PR. And then I had an EM. I had an EM because I kind of like told the EM, I was like, look, well, this was like the thread with the EM. I told the EM, I was like, hey, look, I've been talking to Claude today. It's probably annoying when people are like, hey, I'm a non-technical person. I talked to the robot. This is what the robot said. Is it right? Like roast my conversation with the robot. That's super annoying. I know that other PMs in my area, like in my space, are doing it. I know that engineers are like, this is fucking, don't make me argue with your robot after your conversation. But and I don't want to go super deep down that path. I'm just saying I did that, right? So I did that. I gave it to the EM. I was like, I don't even know if this is even helpful, but like this thing that I asked you to have an engineer work on, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I've talked to the robot, and here's some kind of findings that I got along the way. If they're helpful, great. If you don't want to read it, don't bother. And then like 30 minutes later, I was like, all right, well, here's a PR. that I actually, because I got it to push up a PR like with these changes, and if that's helpful.
And the
awesome.
tests are failing though too, right? So what's interesting, and you're like, oh, what do you think about what my robot came up with? First of all, I like to joke. Anytime I see someone post clearly just an AI written thing that they want my feedback on, I go, my AI thought your AI's guide looked great. I will offer though, you can tell it, yeah, go push a PR, then go see how it went, then get the checkboxes green. Make the tests pass. You can tell it.
Right, that's funny.
And you can also, with Claude Code at least, probably Cowork as well, Claude Code keeps your literal back and forth on your computer. You can have Claude Code, you can open up a fresh session and have it look at how that conversation went and have it judge the conversation and the PR. Or another technique is you open a fresh session and you go, review this PR.
Okay. Yeah. It's almost like having a third, it's like having a third party come in and look at it.
It's the are you sure of PRs.
Right. Okay, cool. And I could have taken it to the next step. The goal of this session was like, the twofold goal of the session did not include Michael fixes the problem. It was like Michael learns more about the problem, and because this was the problem I was already learning about, I also wanted to make sure the pipeline is there for me to submit a PR, because in the future, there are times when somebody's like, hey bro, can you change like this label? I literally text change, copy change. Can you just like change this in one of our systems? I'm like, I want to be able to submit the PR, have an engineer be like, approved, merged, whatever, no problem. And I just want to make sure the pipeline worked. So instead of doing it with instead of making up something and like having it pretend to make like a text change or something, I just like had it fuck with that one meaty thing that I was already working on. The PR wasn't huge. It was like a 46 line change PR, which isn't like massive, but that was what I did. And so and then of course I sent the PR to the EM and I was like, hey, funny, look, Michael's first PR, still don't read it if it's not useful to you. But they got back to me, like this was on like Friday, whatever. They got back to me like a few days later after I got back from like vacation, and they were like, "Hey, on your PR, there's like 3 tests failing. Do you want to address that? Do you want like an engineer to pick this up and push it through, or do you want to like get feed?" They're basically like, "How do you want to like play this?" And I was like, "Hold on," and I went and I closed the PR, and I was like, "I don't want anybody to touch this. I don't want feedback from engineers. I don't want to try to fix this. I never intended for this code to go into production. If an engineer who picks up this project wants to reference this closed PR and they look at it and like, holy shit, he did my job for me. I just need to tweak a couple things to get these tests to pass. Phenomenal." And they can have all the credit, but definitely not something I'm going to try to
That is
pursue
the
at this moment.
correct thing to do. You are a good steward of the alien superpower you've been granted.
It is that. It is alien superpower, right? I mean,
It is. It
I
is
had an engineer
absolutely
who's like,
alien superpower.
what the fuck? Congrats that you and yours are engineers now." And I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely not deluded into thinking that yet, at least.
Good, good, good. Because earlier today, Claude told me that I came up with an enterprise scale reasoning engine, and I'm like, you got to stop talking to me that way. All right. It's like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, that can't be true.
That can't be
That's
true.
never true. Whenever
I
I
know.
ask, are you sure? You say, oh, wait, no, there's a bunch of GitHub repos doing this better than you. And it's like, thank you. Okay.
I know. I know. I asked.
It is always nice when you can get it to when you can get it to reply, holy shit, and then it's like, yeah, that's right. That's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I asked another kind of another unrelated EM, like another kind of peer person on my level in my org. I know we're getting close on time. I was like, "Hey, I made this like slide deck. This is for kind of like high level stakeholders. I made this slide deck, and I have this kind of supporting doc. I don't know if I should save it for like when I'm presenting, or if I should just kind of give it to them now as extra context. Like, what do you think?" And she was like, "I don't know. They like to use like LLMs to like read stuff anyway, so just kind of like send it to them. They'll probably drop it into Claude and have it summarize it for them anyway." And she was like, "No offense," and I was like, "None taken. I didn't write it. Claude wrote it. So Claude can read it and summarize it too. If you want, I'll have Claude summarize it and I'll send them that too. So here's the deck.
They
Here's the doc.
summarize the
Here's
summary,
Claude's
so just
summary.
send them
I know. So funny,
That's
right?
great. That's
It is.
great.
It is so weird. It is so weird. But
I mean,
wow.
I had earlier today. I'm trying to close out this. I think I've told you about. I'm working on a autonomous code factory, which is the opposite of being skeptical of agentic engineering.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I have to go through these gates of approval. And I was like, oh, go look up the way we do that process, and then write a document that fulfills the expectations of the person who needs to give me a thumb, and draft a narrative arc in ultra terse at the top with no evidence, just a consistent explanation, and then flesh it out below. And like, I read every line and I was working with it on it, but I was like, yeah, pull this data, put that here. These don't make sense. Reformat it this way. As long as you read the article that you have generated and you go, I'm happy with this, that's a human artifact.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Do not blindly send AI
Absolutely.
generated content to people.
Absolutely not. And I still haven't seen a single thing get one-shotted that I was like, oh, fuck yeah, we're done. I'm always wanting to make changes and fix them up. To close this out here, I had a colleague send me an article today that I'm going to share with you so that you can have Claude read it for you and tell you what it thinks. But I'm curious kind of like what it means to you, what I took away from it, because kind of the general vibe, it's like a study, and the general vibe was like, oh, these agents are like, they can't be trusted. You can't trust autonomous agents because they make things worse over time. Like they degrade your documents, they degrade your information, and it harkened to me. Like I thought back to what we talked about with damn it, why do I always forget the name of it? What's the thing that runs in a loop? What's the loop?
Ralph?
Ralph loops. It made me think of Ralph loops and how we're kind of talking about like you run the loop and it does degrade, it gets worse. So then you make a correction to the loop and then it like gets better. You sort of like make the correction at the loop level. Anyway, it just got me thinking about like I feel like it's what I said in response was like, yeah, I still feel like the autonomous agent thing is not ready for prime time, in that you need human gating, like you still need human gates. Not that I think like, oh, you're always going to need human gates and we can never have autonomous agents. I was like, I don't know that this article in any way proves to me that like you can never trust an autonomous agent. I think it's more so talking about specific things. Anyway, I'll share it with
I'll
you. I
be
am
I'll
curious
be
about
I'll
your
be I'll
thoughts.
be curious to read it. A lot of my opinion around that category of challenge comes down to, yeah, you can't trust an agent, but you can trust 100 of them for one of them to pull off the evaluation criteria that you were looking for
Yeah,
as more of a stochastic problem searching space more than hopefully this one agent pulls it off.
yeah.
But we
I'll share
can
it
we
with you
can
and Mabry, and I'll ask what do you guys' LLMs think of this article. Anyway, we're at time. I don't even know yet what I want to talk about next week. I can't believe that we just blew through this hour. Thank you for letting me just go and for responding to some
you
of it
had a
with
lot in you.
super useful stuff. I'm gonna try some of the things already that you told me about, and I'll probably continue to bother you as I go along here, and we'll figure out by next week what the next thing is. But I mean, this is turning into like build it faster. Michael's trying to desperately just to hang on to the ride right now because it's pretty wild. It's a good time.
Right. Which mouse is this to end the call? All right. Well, very cool. Glad to hear you're building it faster, bud. Later.